Hello and welcome to this channel. In this video, we will talk about diabetic ketoacidosis or DKA. Diabetic ketoacidosis, characterized by hyperglycemia and ketoacidosis, is a medical emergency. DKA is characteristic of type 1 diabetes where individuals lack endogenous insulin, and it is often the presenting problem in newly diagnosed type 1 diabetic patients. In established type 1 diabetes, DKA may be precipitated by an intercurrent illness because of failure to increase insulin dose appropriately to compensate for the stress response. Sometimes DKA develops because of errors in self-management like missing some insulin doses. It shall be noted, however, that DKA can also occur in type 2 diabetes mellitus, particularly during infections, severe trauma, or other causes of stress that increases the level of counter-regulatory hormones, thus producing a state of profound inhibition of insulin action. DKA is a serious cause of morbidity in type 1 diabetes. Mortality in children and adolescents most commonly is caused by cerebral edema, while in adults, causes of mortality with DKA include hypokalemia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and comorbid conditions such as acute myocardial infarction, sepsis, or pneumonia. Coming on to pathophysiology. In normal individuals, after food intake, insulin is required in glucose utilization for energy production and also for glycogen synthesis for storage. Insulin also suppresses gluconeogenesis and lipolysis. And during starvation, where insulin release gets less due to lack of food intake, body uses an alternate mechanism for energy production known as ketosis. It is a less efficient mechanism than glycolysis. In this mechanism, fatty acids are used as substrate and ketones are generated. However, in starvation, residual insulin action can prevent excessive lipolysis and hepatic ketogenesis while still allowing for peripheral ketone use. In DKA, due to lack of insulin, two main metabolic abnormalities occur. One is hyperglycemia that occurs due to poor peripheral tissue glucose utilization, increased hepatic glucose output due to gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis. Initially, when elevated glucose levels cause an increase in osmolality, a shift of water occurs from the intracellular to extracellular space, and increased water intake stimulated by thirst help to maintain intravascular volume. There is osmotic diuresis and polyuria occurs. When polyuria continues and there is decreased fluid intake as a result of nausea and increased losses resulting from vomiting that accompany ketoacidosis, compensatory mechanisms like increased water intake due to thirst cannot keep pace with fluid losses. All these results in depletion of intravascular volume that leads to decreased renal blood flow. The kidney's ability to excrete glucose is therefore reduced. Hypovolemia also stimulates counter-regulatory stress hormones, therefore glucose levels rise acutely owing to the increased glucose production stimulated by these hormones and decreased clearance by the kidney. Increased osmolarity and reduced renal blood flow activate renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, leading to sodium retention and potassium loss. In DKA, coma occurs in a minority of patients, and this occurs due to hyperosmolarity and not acidosis. Profound cellular dehydration occurs in response to marked increase in plasma osmolality. Severe loss of intracellular fluid in the brain leads to coma. Coma occurs when the effective plasma osmolality reaches 330 milliosmol per liter. Second metabolic abnormality is ketogenesis. Insulin deficiency pushes the body in starvation-like state, where ketogenesis is the alternate pathway for energy production. There is lipolysis and supply of free fatty acids for hepatic ketogenesis. Stress hormones like catecholamines, which were released as a result of dehydration, further exacerbate lipolysis and ketogenesis. The increase in ketogenesis results in increased serum levels of ketones and ketonuria. When ketogenesis exceeds the body's capacity to metabolize acidic ketones, these accumulate in blood. Insulin deficiency is also thought to decrease the ability of tissues to use ketones, thus contributing to the maintenance of ketosis. Acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyrate are the chief ketone bodies produced by the liver. These are organic acids and therefore cause metabolic acidosis, decreasing blood pH and serum bicarbonate. The presence of unmeasured ketoacid anions in DKA causes an increased anion gap. Respiratory center is stimulated and there is hyperventilation, which partially compensates for the metabolic acidosis by reducing carbon dioxide. When the pH level is lower than 7.2, characteristic deep, rapid respirations occurs known as acidotic or small breathing. Although acetone is a minor product of ketogenesis, its fruity odor can be detected on the breath during DKA. Sodium is lost in addition to water during the osmotic diuresis accompanying DKA, therefore total body sodium is depleted. Serum sodium concentration also decreases due to water drawn into the intravascular space from cells owing to the osmotic activity of elevated glucose. Serum sodium falls approximately 1.6 millimole per liter for every 100 mg per deciliter increase in glucose. Total body stores of potassium are also depleted by diuresis and vomiting. However, acidosis, insulin deficiency, and elevated glucose levels cause a shift of potassium out of cells. This maintains normal or even elevated serum potassium levels. With the administration of insulin and correction of acidosis, serum potassium falls as potassium moves back into the cells. Without treatment, potassium can fall to dangerously low levels, leading to potentially lethal cardiac arrhythmias. Therefore, potassium is given in the treatment of DKA. Clinical features. Clinical features include vomiting, lethargy, weakness, abdominal pain, polyuria, polydipsia, anorexia, or presentation with coma in severe cases. Typically, a type 1 diabetic patients present with gradual drowsiness, vomiting, and dehydration. Signs include ketotic breath, dehydration, deep breathing, or sighing, small hyperventilation, or coma. Triggers for precipitating DKA include intercurrent infection, surgery, acute myocardial infarction, pancreatitis, chemotherapy, use of antipsychotics, wrong insulin dose, or non-compliance with the medication. Diagnosis. The cardinal biochemical features are hyperglycemia, that is blood glucose is approximately more than 200 mg per deciliter or more than 11 millimole per liter. Metabolic acidosis, where venous bicarb is less than 15 millimole per liter and or venous pH is less than 7.3. Hyperketonemia, that is more than 3 millimole per liter of ketones in the blood, or ketonuria more than 2 plus on standard urine sticks. The tests which needs to be done in DK include obviously blood glucose, ketones, measurement of pH, bicarbonate. Use venous blood for this purpose and do arterial blood gases only if there is hypoxia or reduced GCS. Also measure osmolality, urea and electrolytes, full blood count, ECG to exclude myocardial infarction and also to see effects of electrolyte abnormalities due to DKA. Chest X-ray needs to be done to exclude ARDS or pneumonia. Do urinalysis and also do blood culture and if indicated urine culture for septic screen. If one or more of the following features is present on admission, this indicates severe diabetic ketoacidosis and consider transferring patient to high dependency unit or intensive care unit for monitoring and central venous access. These features include blood ketones more than 6 millimole per liter, venous bicarb less than 5 millimole per liter, venous or arterial pH less than 7, potassium less than 3.5 millimole per liter, GCS less than 12, oxygen saturation less than 92% on room air assuming that there is no respiratory illness, systolic blood pressure less than 90 mm of mercury, pulse more than 100 or less than 60 beats per minute, and anion gap more than 16. Coming on to management. DKA is a medical emergency that should be treated in hospital, preferably in high dependency unit. Regular clinical and biochemical review is essential, particularly during the first 24 hours of treatment. The main cornerstones of diabetic ketoacidosis management include fluid replacement, insulin therapy, and potassium replacement if needed. The rule is replace volume, then correct metabolic defects. First, fluid replacement. In adults, rapid fluid replacement in the first few hours is usually recommended. Caution is advised, however, in children and elderly people because of the risk of cerebral edema. Typical fluid deficit is 100 ml per kg, so for an average 70 kg individual, the fluid deficit is almost 7 liters. Normal saline is the replacement fluid of choice for the correction of the extracellular fluid deficit. If the plasma sodium is greater than 155 millimole per liter, half saline may be used initially. Give 1 liter of fluid in 1 hour and faster if systolic blood pressure is less than 90 mm of mercury, then 1 liter over 2 hours, then 1 liter again over 2 hours, then 1 liter over 4 hours, and then 1 liter over 4 hours, and so on and so forth. This regime may not be appropriate for all. Reassess frequently, especially if young, elderly, pregnant, or patient with comorbidities. Introduction of 10% glucose infusion is recommended when blood glucose falls below 250 mg per deciliter. The 0.9% saline infusion should be continued to correct circulating volume, so both glucose and saline infusions are used concurrently. Now, insulin therapy. A fixed rate intravenous insulin infusion of 0.1 unit per kg body weight per hour is recommended. Exceptionally, if intravenous administration is not feasible, soluble insulin can be given by intramuscular injection with a loading dose of 10 to 20 units, which is followed by 5 units hourly. Or a fast-acting insulin analog can be given hourly by subcutaneous injection, initially 0.3 unit per kg body weight, then 0.1 unit per kg hourly. The blood glucose concentration should fall by 55 to 110 mg per deciliter per hour, or blood ketones concentration fall by at least 0.5 millimole per liter per hour. A more rapid decrease in blood glucose should be avoided, as this might precipitate hypoglycemia and the serious complication of cerebral edema, particularly in children. Failure of blood glucose to fall within 1 hour of commencing insulin infusion should lead to a reassessment of insulin dose. Ketosis, dehydration, acidemia, infection, and stress all combine to produce severe insulin resistance in some cases, but most will respond to a low-dose insulin regime. When the blood glucose has fallen, 10% dextrose infusion is introduced, and insulin infusion continued to encourage glucose uptake into cells and restoration of normal metabolism. About long-acting insulin analogs, continue the use of long-acting insulin analogs administered subcutaneously during the initial management of DKA, and this provides background insulin and reduces the risk of in-hospital DKA when intravenous insulin is discontinued. Restoration of the usual insulin regime by subcutaneous injection is instituted when the patient is both biochemically stable and is able to eat and drink normally. Potassium replacement. Careful monitoring of potassium is essential to the management of DKA because both hypo and hyperkalemia can occur and are potentially life-threatening. Potassium replacement is not usually recommended with the first liter of fluid because pre-renal failure may be present secondary to the dehydration, and plasma potassium falls with the treatment as potassium enters cells. So after first liter of fluid, add potassium according to the most recent VBG result. If potassium is more than 5.5 millimole per liter, there is no need of adding potassium chloride to the infusion. If potassium level is between 3.5 and 5.5, add 40 millimole of potassium chloride to 1 liter of the fluid that is going to be infused. If potassium level is less than 3.5, the potassium replacement regime needs to be reviewed. Seek help from ICU team for higher doses. Aim to maintain potassium between 4 and 5.5 millimole per liter. Cardiac rhythm should be monitored in severe DKA because of risk of electrolyte-induced cardiac arrhythmia. Bicarbonate. Adequate fluid and insulin replacement should resolve the acidosis. Bicarbonate may increase risk of cerebral edema and is not recommended. Phosphate. There is no evidence of benefit with phosphate replacement unless low levels are detected in the presence of respiratory or muscle weakness. Complications of DKA. In DKA, cerebral edema can occur, aspiration pneumonia, hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, hypophosphatemia, and thromboembolism. And this brings us to the point that thromboprophylaxis shall be given to all patients with DKA unless contraindicated. Further episodes of DKA can be prevented, evaluate compliance with the treatment, and educate about triggers of DKA. I hope you have learned something useful from this video. If so, please like this video, share with your colleagues, and subscribe to this channel.